Okay, federal system. Next, we are going to discuss the concept of federal system. So, I already said in Article 1, India is called a union of states. So, we are not called a federation of states. What do you mean by union of states? So, all the states, 28 states and 8 union territories come together to form a union of states. So, however, also call ourselves a federation, federal form of government. So, what is the difference between federal form of government and unitary government? So, basically, what is meant by federation? A federation means there are two levels of government, two or more levels of government. So, in India, the levels of government is, one is the union government, second is the state governments. So, there is clear division of power between union government and the state government, by which, what is, where do we see this division? It is seen in 7th schedule, union list, state list and concurrent list. So, I clearly specified what is the meaning of federation. So, there are many federations, like in Switzerland, it is a federation, Canada is a federation, okay. So, even United States is a federation, okay. So, what is the difference between federal and unitary government? So, we are going to have a brief look into it. So, in federation, there is dual government. I already said what is dual government. Unitary system, only single government. Or give one example of unitary form of government. China or France is a form of unitary form of government. Okay. In federation, there is always a written constitution to specify the clear separation of power. However, in unitary form of government, the constitution may be written or unwritten. However, in dual government, constitution is always written. Written means constitution, there will be a proper book where constitution is written down. Next comes the division of power. So, national and regional government, there is always a division of power. However, in unitary government, there is no division of power. All the power is concentrated in the union government. Okay. Next, in federal government, the constitution is supreme. However, in unitary government, constitution may be supreme or it may not be supreme. So, unitary government, the constitution is flexible as well as rigid. However, in federal government, constitution is mostly rigid. So, in federal government, the judiciary is independent. So, why is judiciary is independent in federal government? Because whenever there is a fight between state and center or among the states, we are going to go to the court and say and ask for justice. So, court is going to treat the union and the state or the dispute between state and state without any bias, and they are going and give a judgment in favor of justice. So, under which provision of the constitution do the states go to the Supreme Court? Under 131. So, this article is very, very important. So, however, in unitary form of government, judiciary may not be important as well as important. Okay. Next comes the federal features. What are the federal features of Indian Constitution? Indian Constitution, what federal features do we have? Even though I mentioned Article 1 says India is a union of states. So, we have dual polity. What is dual polity? State government, central government. Then we have written constitution. Indian Constitution, written constitution. That's why that's a federal feature. Next, we have division of powers. Division of powers. Administrative powers are divided, financial powers are divided, and also legislative power is divided. Even executive power is divided. I am going to discuss in the future course of the same class. What is financial division, executive division, administrative division. Next comes supremacy of the constitution in India. That is a federal feature. Then we have a rigid constitution. What concept makes the constitution rigid? The concept of basic structure discussed at the beginning of the class make the constitution a rigid constitution. Rigid means it cannot be easily amended. Okay. Next comes independent judiciary. We know Indian judiciary is the most powerful organ. They appoint themselves. They don't care for anybody. They cannot be removed. Even though there is a provision of removal in the constitution, the procedure is so complex, still now not even a single judge of High Court or Supreme Court is removed. That's why there is lack of accountability in the Indian judiciary. So, Indian judiciary is considered to be, so it is said that Indian judiciary is also corrupt because there is no accountability, whereas the executive is held accountable by legislature as well as the judiciary, and mostly by the people during 5 years, every 5 years election. Okay. Next comes the unitary features. What are the unitary features in Indian constitution? Strong center. Center can impose emergency. Center can impose president's rule. So center's direction have to be followed by the states in the in areas relating to union list. So many other things are there. And states not indestructible means states can be changed at the whims and fancies of the center. Like Telangana was formed by at the whim of the central government. So next comes the concept of single constitution. So we have single constitution for the state as well as the center. In USA, the states have a separate constitution and the center has a separate constitution. In India, Jammu and Kashmir had its own constitution. However, in 2019, by abolition of Article 370, Jammu Kashmir was made a union territory and brought into the political framework and constitutional framework of the Indian constitution. Next comes we have flexibility in the constitution. That is a unitary feature. So constitution only the union government can amend. States have no role. And even emergency provision, as I told, center can impose emergency at its own whims and fancies, subject to certain conditions which we will discuss in the emergency chapter. Single citizenship, unitary feature. So in United States, every state has a citizenship and federation has its own citizenship. However, in India there is only one citizenship. Integrated judiciary. We have district courts or session courts, and we have High Court, Supreme Court. So only one integrated judicial system is there in India, and subordinate courts here. Subordinate courts. Okay. So the hierarchy goes like this, and also the responsibility goes like this. And we have All India services. All India services, which are the three All India services in India? It is Indian Administrative Service, Indian Police Service, and Indian Forest Service. So these three are the only Indian All India services for which all of us are fighting to or working hard to get into. Okay. Next comes the concept of integrated audit machinery. So that is a unitary feature. The Comptroller and Auditor General (CAG) audits central government, union government's account as well as the state government's account. However, he is appointed mostly by the central government's recommendation. So these are the unitary features. So critical evaluation of the federal feature. So there was many criticisms over a period of time, that is the federation is being misused. So the federal elements are compromised or not respected by the union government. Via what? So we have the concept of president's rule. Which article? Article 356. Article 356 speaks of the Article 356 speaks of imposition of president rule. This has been the most controversial article in the Indian Constitution. So, in S.R. Bommai case, who is S.R. Bommai? Former Chief Minister of Karnataka. So, his son Sri Basuraj Bommai is the present Chief Minister of Karnataka. So, S.R. Bommai case 1994, Supreme Court gave certain guidelines saying what are the criterion for the imposition of the president rule. So, now it is impossible to impose president rule at the whims and fancies, because there is always Supreme Court to which the states can go and plead that center has misused its power. However, every now and then we see the center misusing this power, even though Supreme Court judgment is there in S.R. Bommai case. Okay. Next comes central states relation. How the relationship between the center, that is the Indian government, and the state governments is there. So we divide the relation in various fields, into various fields. So one is the legislative relation, next is the administrative relation, and next comes the financial relation, and one more is the, okay, so executive relation also comes under the administrative relation. Okay, legislative relation. So Article 245 to 255, 245 to 255 speaks of the legislative distribution of power. So also Schedule 7, 7th schedule gives how many lists? 3 lists. Union list, where union government can form the laws. State list, where state government can form the laws. And concurrent list, where both can form the laws. So these are the 3 lists. Okay. So legislative relations. So territorial extent. So central governments, the parliament's law applies to all of India, no exception. Union territories, acquired territories, as well as all the states, central parliament's law gets applied. However, a state's law, suppose Karnataka government forms a law, but that law is not applicable in the state of Tamil Nadu. It is limited to the territory of the Karnataka state. Next comes legislative relations. How is it distributed? I already said we distributed in the 3 lists. So union list has 97 subjects. Presently, how many subjects are there in the union list? Originally it had 97 subjects. Next, state list. Presently it has 52 subjects. Then we have so union list presently has 98 subjects, 98 areas where it can form laws. State list has 52 subjects where it can form laws. Next, concurrent list has how many subjects? So it has 47 subjects where both the state and union can frame the laws. Okay, this is how the concept of distribution of power is delineated in the parliament. However, in the concept of Goods and Services Act had a separate provision. 101 Constitutional Amendment Act gave the power of framing financial related legislature to a separate body. Which is that body? Goods and Services Tax Council. So for that, separate amendment was carried out. That is 101st Amendment Act. Which article did it impact? Article 246, which gives rise to GST Council. Okay. Next comes parliamentary legislation in the state field. When all can the parliament legislate in the state field? So I already said parliament can only legislate with respect to the subjects or the areas in the union list. 98 subjects. However, in certain special circumstances, Parliament can legislate in the state list also. So that is when Rajya Sabha passes a resolution. You already know Rajya Sabha is a. So those who don't know, please listen. Rajya Sabha is a house of states. That is states representation. Lok Sabha represents the people of India all together, whereas the entities of state have their representation in the Rajya Sabha, which is a permanent house. So Lok Sabha every 5 years gets dissolved, whereas Rajya Sabha is never dissolved. It is similar to the Senate in the United States of America. That is also not subject to dissolution. Okay, coming back to parliamentary legislation in state field. So when Rajya Sabha passes a resolution, so when the resolution is passed by a simple majority, then Parliament can, I already told in the first class what is meant by simple majority. That is majority of the persons present and voting. Okay. When the Rajya Sabha passes the resolution, then thus Parliament can pass a bill with respect to state list. During national emergency, state list, even the Parliament can frame laws whatever it wants. So when states themselves make a request, so a group of states come together and they say, please make a law on our behalf, then Parliament can make a law for those particular states. It does not extend to all the states. Okay, in this direction, there are few acts are passed. That is Wildlife Protection Act was 1972 and Water Protection Act, Water Prevention and Control of Pollution Act, and Human Organ Transplantation Act was passed by the Parliament based on the request of the states. Next, during President's rule, the states during the President rule. So what is President rule? I am going to discuss in the chapter on emergency. So during President's rule, the state government is carried out by the President, not by the Chief Minister and Governor. Okay. So during President rule, state list, central can legislate. Next comes central's control over state legislation. So does center has any control over state legislation? So I already told state list is exclusive jurisdiction of the state legislative assembly. So here when the state legislative assembly or wherever there is council, state legislative council, if they pass an act, the governor can reserve that act for the assent of the president. So then central power comes into picture. So there are certain areas, certain bills in the state list where prior recommendation of the president is required for introduction in the state assembly. What are those areas? Some areas related to interstate trade. Interstate means among the states. Intrastate means within the state. So interstate trade, any provision requires the consent of the president before placing it in the state legislative assembly. Okay, we have discussed the legislative relation. Next comes the administrative relations. Administrative relations also means executive relations. What is meant by executive? The government, the ministers, all the IAS, IPS officers, all subordinate officers, all this machinery of the government. So all these employees and secretariats comes under the definition of executive. Okay, also called as administration. So if you are from some district, so you might have heard of the term district administration headed by a district collector. So that is the element of executive. Okay, administrative relations. So distribution of executive powers. So how the executive powers are distributed. So center has executive power. So center has the administrative power when those areas where it can legislate. Where it can legislate? Union list. Union list subjects wherever it can legislate, there the center has executive power. Wherever state can legislate, there they have the executive power. So this is the difference of executive distribution of executive power between the center and the states. Okay, obligation of states and the center. So what do you mean by obligation? States has certain obligation to ensure. So what is the obligation? So state machinery, state government employees has to ensure that parliamentary laws are given effect to. So parliamentary laws are not violated. That has to be taken care by the state administration. Next comes to that state government should ensure that central government's executive power is not impeded. So executive power is not violated. That is also should be taken care by the. So basically one is parliamentary laws is not violated. Second is central's executive power is not violated. Should be taken care by the state governments. Okay. Next comes the center's direction to the states. Can the center give directions to the states? Yes, it can give certain directions to the states. So what are the directions? So means of communication. So military. So suppose there is a Indian army. Indian army is going to build a bridge. So the center can give the direction to the state government, assist the or give land to the Indian army in order to build the bridge. So there are many bridges being built in the northeast India for the easy movement of the armed forces for the conflict prone areas. Even in the Jammu and Kashmir, these bridges are being built. Okay. Next comes where are the other areas? So to protect the railways. So you know railways belong to the central list. Railways, Indian railways belong to the central list. Okay. There the state has to protect the railway infrastructure. So that is the obligation of the states. Next comes the states have to make provision for teaching in mother tongue. So with respect to teaching in mother tongue, which article? Article 350B, important. So if under this article, the center can give directions to the state stating that you have to make provision for teaching in mother tongue of the particular student. Okay. These are some of the directions. Mutual delegation of function. Mutual delegation of function means the state government can delegate its job to the central government. So the central government can delegate its job to the state government. However, before delegating the job, each has to take the permission of the other. So center cannot without taking the permission of the state government give its job to the state, or state cannot do vice versa. So they have to take the permission of the president and then delegate the job to the center. Okay. Last is the concept of cooperation between center and states. The states and center have to cooperate in order to run this big machinery called India. So how do they cooperate? How do they cooperate? So there are many ways. One is the concept of interstate council. Next is the concept of zonal council. So also we have Team India under Niti Aayog. These are the various arenas through which the center and the states cooperate. So we have discussed sufficiently what is the administrative relations. Next we have to, okay, there are many other administrative relations which we have to discuss. Okay. Next comes the concept of All India Public Service Commission. So Public Service Commission means what? So we have Central Public Service Commission. Which is the Central Public Service Commission? We have UPSC and also Staff Selection Commission. However, UPSC is the main Central Public Service Commission. It is a constitutional authority, whereas SSC is not a constitutional authority. So, State Public Service Commission, we have in India, Karnataka State Public KPSC, sorry, I wrote KSPC. Anyhow, KPSC is also not functioning well. We can also afford to make the mistake of writing its name wrong. KPSC, Karnataka Public Service Commission. Okay. Likewise, so here also, so via the KPSC and UPSC also, center and states election can be discussed. How the chairmen and members of the State Public Service Commission, KPSC chairman and members are elected or nominated or appointed. What is the exact phrase? Appointed. They are appointed by the state government. However, they can only be removed by the central government, that is president. President can only remove them. So that is one of the feature. Next comes the concept of All India Services. So All India Services, I already told, we have 3 services. So they are appointed by the central government. However, their transfer, salary, pension, their dismissal, dismissal comes under jurisdiction of again the UPSC and DOPT, central government. However, their transfer, their salary, their pension and their immediate jurisdiction, that is, so immediate control lies with the state government. However, ultimate control lies with the central government. That is the, so what is immediate control? So the state government can suspend a IPS or IAS officer. So that is immediate control. However, dismissal from the service, which is long-term control, lies in the whom? So it lies in DOPT. So DOPT takes the recommendation of UPSC. If UPSC says this guy is a corrupt, so dismiss him. So DOPT sends it to the president. President says this guy doesn't deserve to be in IAS or IPS, signs a letter, so that guy stands dismissed. So that is immediate and ultimate control. Next comes integrated judicial system. Here also central administrative relations. So the Supreme Court has to deal with both central laws and state laws. However, High Court has to deal with what? State laws and central laws both. However, so integrated judicial system. However, High Court of Karnataka need not implement the laws of Tamil Nadu state in Karnataka. So they have to limit themselves to the laws of state government of Karnataka and also central government laws. So that is one thing. So we have an integrated judicial system. That is how the central and state relations, administrative relations are carried out through the integrated judicial system. Hope my point is clear. Okay. Next comes relations during emergency. During emergency, the normal relations of transaction between center and states goes topsy-turvy. That is, during normal times, what happens? State is as its own authority, need not listen to the center most of the times, except in areas where it has to receive directions. However, during the emergency, the entire control of the state government can be exercised by the central government, and entire state legislature can be exercised by the parliament. Okay, that is what is meant by central state relations during emergency. Extra constitutional devices. What are the extra constitutional devices? So central state relations, as I said, is also dealt by Niti Aayog. Niti Aayog. So that is a extra constitutional devices. Okay. So last but not the least is the financial relations. So financial relations means what? So even now that GST has been enacted, we have a integrated taxation system with respect to indirect tax. So what is indirect tax? So indirect tax is, suppose you go and buy a biscuit at a shop. So you don't directly pay tax to the government for that. However, tax is already included in the MRP. So in MRP, which you are going to pay to the shopkeeper, you are already paying a tax. That tax the source company is going to deposit to the government. So that is what is meant by indirect tax. Tax hidden in the products which we are going to buy and utilize. So direct tax means what? Income tax. Suppose I am teaching here, I am earning a income at a particular forum. Okay, so that income I have to pay tax to the government based on the tax slab, that is direct tax, and also corporation tax. So all these corporate companies have to pay tax to the government. What is the corporate tax rate now? So presently the corporate tax in India is 25%. Okay. Next comes, so the allocation of taxing powers. So how taxation powers is allocated between the central and state government. So the parliament has exclusive power of taxation when it comes to union list. Union list, whatever subjects are there, the central government can tax. State list, states can, whatever the elements are there in states, so they can tax. So to substantiate with an example, so Road Transport Corporation. So Karnataka has KSRTC. So suppose you are going to buy a ticket in the KSRTC bus. So the tax, the particular tax which is embedded in the particular ticket, it goes to the state government. Also electricity. So electricity, BESCOM, we derive, Bengaloreans get the current from, the power from BESCOM. So BESCOM bill every time you are going to, every month you are going to pay. So in that electricity tax goes to the state government because electricity is a state subject. Okay. Next comes the concept of, so likewise central tax. Central tax means what? So central list, what are the elements in the central list? Railway ticket. Likewise, railway is a central concept. So in the central list, so railway ticket, whatever tax is imposed, it goes to the union government. Also atomic energy is a central list. So the power derived out of atomic energy, so that particular power is taxed based on the central tax rate. Okay. So next comes the distribution of tax revenue. How tax revenue is distributed. So in this concept there is a residuary power of taxation. Residuary power means that which does not fall under anything. So that is done by the union, that is the central government. Okay. Also there are certain restrictions. So restrictions placed by the parliament. Parliament placed certain restrictions, certain conditions on the state government to in the area of taxation. So those are in detail, which is not so important from the point of view of exam. However, if you can look at it in Lakshmikant, it's well and good. Distribution of tax revenues. How tax are distributed between center and state. So here there are many tax. So taxes levied by the center but collected and appropriated by the states. Certain taxes are levied by the center. Levied means what? So center imposes a tax. However, state government collects the tax and uses it. It doesn't give anything to the center. So what are those taxes? So what are those taxes? So stamp duties, stamp duties, checks, transfer of shares in these areas. So it is utilized by the central government, collected and appropriated. Next, where is the distribution of tax revenues? Tax levied and collected by the center but assigned to the states. So in certain areas, the tax is imposed by the central government and also, so that tax is also collected by the center. However, that entire amount goes to the states. So in what are those taxes? What are those taxes? So taxes on purchase of goods in interstate trade and commerce. Interstate trade and commerce, certain taxes are imposed, that is collected by the center but however given to the states. Next comes levy and collection of goods and service tax in the course of interstate trade of commerce, trade and commerce. So here comes the concept of GST. GST article 269A. So here we have state GST, SGST, CGST. So that is what is brought by GST Amendment Act, that is CGST Amendment Act and SGST Amendment Act. So the article with respect to GST is 269A, which is very, very important. Tax levied and collected by the center but distributed between the center and the states. So certain taxes are collected and levied by the center. So both are done by the center, however it is distributed by the between center and states. What are these taxes? The income tax, the corporation tax, all these fall under this. Okay. So on based on what condition is the distribution takes place? We have Finance Commission. Finance Commission recommendation. Which is the latest Finance Commission? 15th Finance Commission. Who is the head of the 15th Finance Commission? It is Shri N.K. Singh. So they have said, N.K. Singh, they have said, so 41% of the center tax revenue has to go to the states. So earlier it was 42, now 41, 1% will go towards Jammu and Kashmir. So Jammu and Kashmir, we are spending lot of money but getting very less returns thanks to the fragile security situation. So now that it has been converted into a union territory, so the security situation is said to be improving. Okay. So there is one more category, that is surcharge. So what is a surcharge? What is the concept of surcharge? So surcharge means, so there is a concept of cess and surcharge. Cess and surcharge. So cess means, so for any particular area, for example, for any particular venture, if the center levies certain tax amount, that is called as cess. For example, we have education cess for the benefit of education. We have coal cess. So coal cess is for the reduction of pollution. This amount entirely goes to the the central government. Next comes surcharge. Surcharge can be understood as a tax on tax. Tax on tax. So suppose we have GST. So suppose on what luxury goods. Suppose some luxury goods. So mobile phone. What is the GST? I am not aware of. Suppose on some product the GST is 28%. Based on this, suppose in this 28%, suppose an article costs 100 rupees and the tax is 28%. So 28 rupees is the tax which the central government gets. 28 rupees, sorry, 28 rupees is the tax. So on this tax amount, one more tax is imposed. Suppose 10%. So 10% surcharge is imposed on this tax. What is 10%? It is 2.8 rupees. That is the surcharge. 2.8 rupees is the surcharge. So this is the concept of surcharge, which is given by Article 271. So last category is the taxes which are collected and retained by the states. States itself will collect the tax and state itself will retain the tax. There are 18 in number, 18 concepts, 18 areas where the states collect the tax and retain it itself. What are these 18 areas? We have land revenue, agricultural income. So most of the states don't tax any agricultural income because agriculture farmers are a very politically sensitive concept, so they don't tax on the agriculture. Land revenue, taxes on lands and buildings, taxes on minerals, taxes on alcohols and liquors, taxes on sale of electricity. All these come under the areas where taxes are imposed by the state, collected by the state, and they use it for themselves. Next comes the concept of distribution of non-tax revenue. So we have non-tax revenues as well. So what are the non-tax revenues? So post and telegraphs. So if you are going to a post office and say, I have a speed post to some other state. So that fees, and also railways. Railway, if you are going from place A, you are going from Delhi to Agra. So you are going to buy a ticket, 200 rupees, suppose. So it is a non-tax revenue. It is a amount fees levied by the government. How do that distributed between the center and states? That is so in those areas, post, telegraphs, railways, banking, currency, all these areas, non-tax revenue goes entirely to the center. There is no amount allocated to the states. However, there are areas like minerals, irrigation, fisheries, forests. In these areas, the non-tax revenue goes directly to the states. So center cannot claim any share in that particular area. Okay. Next comes the concept of grants in aid to the states. So Article 275. So every time, so there is a flood, there is poverty, there is some drought, there is some situation in a state, center is going to grant some amount to the states. That comes under Article 275. So there are many types of grants. Now what I said as Article 275 is a statutory grant. So what is meant by statutory grant? Statutory grant means those grants which are made mandatory by a law. So suppose, so we have scheduled areas. So to give an example, we have the concept of scheduled areas. Scheduled areas under Schedule 5, Part 5 and Schedule 5 and Schedule 6. We have scheduled areas, and Schedule 6 we have scheduled and tribal areas. Scheduled areas and scheduled tribes and tribal areas are Schedule 5 and Schedule 6. We have these concepts. So here to give the amount, so to distribute the amount to these areas, so the center is mandatorily so the center has to mandatorily distribute give some grant in aid to these areas. Those are statutorily mandated. What is the statute? What is the statute? The statute is Constitution. So Constitution mandates certain amount to be given to these scheduled areas under Article 275. Next comes the concept of discretionary grants. Discretionary grants means what? So the center can give at its own discretion. So there is no obligation. If the government wants, it can give, or else no. So during floods, during droughts, the center can give amount to the states. That comes under discretionary grants, governed by Article 282. So moving